Previously, Jinwoo activated the mutilation skill and unleashed a series of slashes that rained down on the Ant King's body, cutting him down in an instant. With their king defeated, the ant monsters broke ranks and scattered, fleeing the nest in chaos. The hunters let out a collective sigh of relief, thinking the raid was finally over. But their relief was short-lived. Hunter Cha was still in critical condition. Jinwoo rushed to check on her and quickly realized they were running out of time. He pulled out the holy water of life, hoping this potion would heal her. But then, a system notification informed him that since the drug didn't apply to the subject's condition, it was ineffective. Frustration hit Jinwoo like a wave. The potion was useless, and Shadow Exchange was still on cooldown. His mind raced as he desperately tried to think of another way to save Hunter Cha. Suddenly, something clicked in Jinwoo's mind. He turned to the cameraman and asked him to shut off the camera for a moment. At first, the cameraman refused. It was a live broadcast after all, but something in Jinwoo's tone made him hesitate. Jinwoo then ordered his shadow warriors to search for Hunter Min Byunggyu's body. It didn't take long. One of the high orc shadow generals returned, carrying the lifeless form of Min Byungyu. Jinwoo scanned the body, grimacing when he noticed that the Ant King had likely devoured the head. Doubt crept in. Will this even work? But just then, a notification popped up. Shadow extraction can be used on this target. Yunho, clearly confused, asked Jinwoo what he was doing with Byunggyu's body. Jinwoo ignored him, stepping closer to the corpse. He uttered a single word, "Arise." A dark shadow began to creep out of Min Byunggyu's body, but then a notification interrupted. You failed to extract the shadow. Jinwoo frowned and tried again, but the result was the same. It didn't make sense. With his summoning skill at this level, it should have worked easily. Yet it felt as if Min Byunggyu's spirit was resisting, refusing to be summoned. Jinwoo hesitated for a moment. He knew this looked demonic, like something evil trying to summon the dead, but someone's life was on the line. He had to save Hunter Cha. Gritting his teeth, he tried once more. Arise. This time, the corpse reacted. A dense, black shadow enveloped Min Byunggyu's body. Yunho shouted angrily, demanding an explanation for what Jinwoo was doing to Byunggyu's remains. But his anger quickly turned into shock as Byunggyu's body began to rise. Min Byungyu had become a shadow warrior. The other hunters froze in place, stunned and a little terrified by the sheer power that defied all logic. Without any orders, Shadow Min Byungyu began moving toward Hunter Cha. Calmly, he activated his healing magic, saving her life just as she teetered on the edge of death. Yunho watched the scene unfold with pure disbelief. Jinwoo, noticing Yunho's expression, explained that he could sense a person's nature when they were alive. For Byungyu, his healer instincts remained so strong that he acted on his own, without commands. The cameraman stood in shock, unable to process what he'd just witnessed. He now understood why Jinwoo had asked him to turn the camera off. A power like this, raising the dead, couldn't be broadcasted to the entire world. Yunho placed a hand on Jinwoo's shoulder, his voice calm yet firm. He admitted that Jinwoo would do incredible things in the future. He believed Byunggyu's power would help them in the battles ahead, but he asked Jinwoo not to force Byungyu into unnecessary fights. Jinwoo brushed Yunho's hand off, reminding him that this was the second time Yunho had touched his shoulder. But then, after a brief pause, a small smile crept onto his face. This time, Jinwoo felt that Yunho's gesture wasn't about authority or orders. It was a sincere request. Walking toward Shadow Byungyu, Jinwoo agreed with Yunho. Cancel extraction. Slowly, Shadow Min Byungyu began to fade, his form dissolving back into the afterlife. Before disappearing completely, he cast a final smile toward Yunho. Yunho stood still, returning the smile with deep respect. It was hard, but he knew this was the right decision. The silence that followed was heavy, leaving the hunters with mixed emotions as they watched one of their heroes leave for the final time. Meanwhile, the helicopter had arrived at Jeju Island, ready to pick up the hunters. Through the heavy rain, the hunters walked toward the helicopter, sadness clearly etched on their faces. Once everyone got in, Jinwoo turned to Yunho, telling him to leave first. There was still something he needed to take care of. From a distance, The remaining swarm of ant monsters could be seen flying over Jeju Island. Jinwoo summoned Kaisel and quickly hopped onto the dragon's back. He decided to pave the way and wipe out the remaining monsters scattered around. Kaisel spread his wings, soaring into the sky with Jinwoo. As they flew, Jinwoo took out every remaining ant monster, making sure the hunters could leave the island safely. Meanwhile, aboard the Japanese warship where the Japanese team had gathered, Hoshino was still visibly shaken, and the other Japanese hunters approached him, eager to know what had happened. Hoshino, trembling, muttered that the monster he saw was no ordinary enemy. Even Go-Teruji couldn't stand a chance against it. There wasn't a single hunter who could defeat a monster like that. Sugimoto stepped in to calm Hoshino, telling him that the raid on Jeju Island was over. Hoshino's eyes widened in disbelief. It sounded impossible. Sugimoto then recalled Ruji's words about a powerful hunter from Korea. He began to wonder if Sung Jinwoo was the one who had defeated that monster. Suddenly, a crew member reported that a swarm of ants had been detected near the ship, and the hunters were immediately ordered to prepare for battle. Meanwhile, Jinwoo returned to the ant nest to clean up the remaining monsters. His shadow mages cast fire magic, instantly burning the unhatched ant eggs inside the nest. Jinwoo felt both surprised and lucky. Even by destroying unhatched eggs, he was still earning extra experience points. Opening his inventory system, he retrieved the Demon King longsword, an incredible weapon he had acquired from the Demon King. With the sword in hand, Jinwoo gave it a try. His first swing unleashed a crackling bolt of lightning that shook the ground. Amazed by the sword's power, he thought it would be a waste to just leave it sitting in his inventory. Jinwoo decided to use the sword to clear out the remaining ant eggs in the nest. The scene then jumped to the United States, where Michael Corner and David Brennan, the director of the American Hunter Bureau, were watching a replay of the Jeju Island raid. Michael commented on how extraordinary it was for a hunter to control hundreds of creatures, though it was a shame he came from such a small country like Korea. David stared at the screen intently before sharply asking Michael what else he knew about this hunter. Michael handed him a file, explaining that the fire incident involving Sung Il-hwan was connected to Jinwoo. Sung Il-hwan had been found alive in an A-rank dungeon. Although he claimed to be a Korean hunter, there were doubts about whether he was human or a monster. Further investigation revealed that Jinwoo was his son. David looked stunned. He realized this was a rare opportunity to recruit someone like him, even if it risked straining relations between the US and Korea, especially after America had successfully recruited Dongsu. Still, a hunter like Jinwoo was worth fighting for, no matter the cost. David then asked Michael if he was capable of handling the task. Back on Jeju Island, after getting rid of the ant monsters, Jinwoo has now reached level 100. He approached the corpse of the Ant King and intended to get his shadow. Arise! Suddenly, a dark aura surrounded him. Jinwoo felt something was off and wondered if this was the result of a failed shadow extraction. But as the darkness faded, he turned and smiled. The Ant King had been successfully extracted, and it was now a rank general shadow. The shadow knelt before him and expressed that it wanted a name. Jinwoo was stunned to hear the shadow speak. He immediately asked how it could talk, and the ant explained that it had been able to speak even before it died. Jinwoo thought back to Byungyu, Iron, and even Tusk, who had all lost the ability to speak after becoming shadows. He wondered if general-level shadows could ever regain the ability to talk. Jinwoo then asked if the ant would still follow his orders, even though he had killed him. The ant replied that he wasn't dead. He had been brought back to life by Jinwoo's power and would always obey his commands. After a moment of thought, Jinwoo decided on the name Beru, inspired by the author of a famous novel. Afterward, he approached the Ant Queen's corpse and tried extracting her shadow as well. Arise! Slowly, black shadows emerged from the Ant Queen's body, and the extraction was a success, another rank general. But suddenly, control over the shadow ant soldiers shifted to the Ant Queen. Jinwoo was surprised and turned to Beru for an explanation. Beru clarified that the Ant Queen's ability was reproduction and controlling the entire ant colony. That meant all the shadow ants now fell under her control. Jinwoo frowned. There was no need for two heads in his organization. He made a quick decision to cancel the Ant Queen's shadow extraction. Meanwhile, the Shadow Knights continued tirelessly gathering magic crystals. Jinwoo stopped them, explaining that the crystals would be used to rebuild Jeju Island. Instead, he only took Beru's magic core as a reward for his contribution to the raid, showing a level of generosity that matched his immense power. Jinwoo then turned to Beru and asked how many ants were left. Beru reported that before the raid, the ant colony had about 8,700 ants, but now only 4,000 remained. Jinwoo sighed deeply. There was still a lot of work to do. Looking at Beru, Jinwoo gave him a new order: wipe out the remaining ants. Beru bowed respectfully and declared that he would carry out his master's command without hesitation. At the ocean defense line, hunters were in an all-out battle against swarms of flying ants. Warship cannons fired relentlessly, while mage hunters unleashed long-range attacks, trying to bring down the ants in the sky. Hunters from the White Tiger Guild were preparing to launch their next assault, followed by those from Fame Guild and Reaper's Guild, who also joined the fight. Amid the chaos, Lee Min-sung was paralyzed with fear. Despite being a Ranka hunter, his terrified expression drew nothing but a scornful glance from a passing hunter, who muttered that Min-sung was useless. Closer to the shoreline, retired hunters were bracing themselves to stop any ants that might reach the city. Ju-hee and Mr. Song stood anxiously, watching as the swarm of ants approached, growing closer by the second. But just as the ants were about to attack, they were suddenly obliterated. It happened so fast that Ju-hee and Mr. Song couldn't even see what had taken place. Moving at incredible speed, Beru tore through the flying ants in the sky, wiping them out with flawless accuracy. The Jeju Island raid is wrapped up. It took 2 days to clear the ant colony that invaded Korea. Most of the ants have been eradicated, but some flew into the Sea of China. A national-level hunter stood tall, staring down the swarms of ants scattered across the sky. He sized up the many enemies calmly, then drew his 2 swords and released a surge of magical energy that enveloped his body. With a swift slash, he unleashed an attack that wiped out dozens of ants in midair. Their lifeless bodies fell, plummeting into the sea. The hunter sheathed his swords and thought to himself that if the ants that Jinwoo had defeated were still alive, this fight might have been more interesting for him. Meanwhile, a man watched the battle between Jinwoo and the Ant King closely. His assistant, Laura, explained that Jinwoo might have a problem with Hwang Dong-soo. There were rumors that Jinwoo was the mastermind behind the death of Hwang Dong-soo's older brother. The man, Thomas Andre, a national-level hunter and master guild scavenger in America, realized that if the rumors were true, a feud between Dong-soo and Jinwoo was inevitable. Unfortunately, personal conflicts like that would only make it harder for him to recruit a talented hunter like him. Laura asked him what he would do if the conflict between Dong-soo and Jinwoo broke out. Thomas gave a sharp, decisive look. To him, Hwang Dong-soo was part of the Scavenger Guild, and the Scavenger Guild was his. No one, not even the government, was allowed to touch what was his. Later that night on Jeju Island, the hunters from Guild Knights were doing their rounds, collecting magic stones and patrolling the island. As they walked past an ant nest, Jong-soo started talking about his past, which he thought was tragic and sad, but to his junior, it sounded ridiculous. As they were busy collecting crystals, a monster ant appeared out of nowhere. Jong-soo quickly sprang into action, decapitating the ant instantly, then reassured the mining team not to worry. If more ants showed up, he'd take care of them. But their peace was shattered by a mysterious figure who appeared out of nowhere and started walking toward them. Jong-soo immediately warned them that the figure was in a restricted area and demanded to know who they were. The hunters started getting nervous and wondered if the figure was human, preparing to act. The figure glared at them and spoke in an unintelligible language. Jong-soo quickly realized it wasn't human, but a monster. Suddenly, someone snapped the fingers, and an awful aura spread, causing all the hunters to faint in an instant. At the same time, another terrifying figure appeared behind the monster. The 2 figures were the Beast Monarch and Frost Monarch. Frost Monarch explained that he put them to sleep for a bit so they wouldn't cause a ruckus. He felt the remnants of Monarch power in the area and was confused about why the creature was helping humanity. Beast Monarch replied that if Frost Monarch was so curious, he could just ask the creature itself. However, Frost Monarch ignored him and snapped his fingers to open a dimensional portal. He stated that the hunt for the creature would proceed as planned and that he needed to deal with the other creature first, as it was likely still nearby. Beast Monarch taunted him, realizing that Frost Monarch didn't want to get involved. Frost Monarch admitted it and stepped into the dimensional portal, vanishing. Beast Monarch thought the same and decided there was no need to make a fuss. He opened his own dimensional gate with his claws and followed after. Behind the success of the raid on Jeju Island, there was a deep sorrow felt by both the hunters and the people of Korea. The country is holding a funeral for the fallen victims. In the fifth raid on Jeju Island, a total of 4,801 hunters participated, with 64 hunters and 32 civilians losing their lives. Even though this incident claimed many victims, the numbers were still lower than the 4 previous raids. Among the crowd, Jinwoo attended the ceremony and placed a single flower for the victims. Sung Jinwoo has become the hot topic in the media, sparking controversy among the public. Some praise and support Jinwoo for his abilities, especially after he single-handedly took down an S-rank gate. Netizens speculate that his current status might be on par with national-level hunters. But not everyone is on his side. Others criticize and question his actions, arguing that if Jinwoo had joined from the start, Hunter Min Byung-gyu might still be alive. At the event, Yunho and Jinwoo crossed paths. Yunho said he believed there could only be one hero, and that war could only end if hunters worked together. But he was wrong. Jinwoo did it alone. Yunho asked Jinwoo to hold his head high because it was Jinwoo who had ended the tragic tale. With tears in his eyes, Yunho thanked him. At the same time, Jinwoo and Hunter Cha exchanged glances. However, Hunter Cha quickly turned away, her face flushed. Jinwoo was left confused by her strange behavior. After the funeral, Jinwoo met with Mr. Go Gun-hee, the chairman of the Korean Hunters Association. During their conversation, Jinwoo revealed his intention to form his own guild, to which Mr. Go replied that the association would handle all the necessary arrangements. Mr. Go asked if Jinwoo had placed any barriers on Jeju Island because strange things had happened. Hunters from Guild Knights suddenly fell unconscious when they entered the ant nest to collect magic crystals. This took Jinwoo by surprise. He replied that he hadn't done anything like that, then asked what the hunters said after they woke up. Mr. Go explained that they couldn't remember anything after regaining consciousness. Jinwoo wondered in his mind if there were still traps left by the ants. Soon after, an association staff member came to report that someone wanted to meet with Mr. Go. Mr. Go excused himself, and Jinwoo prepared to head home. In the parking lot, before Jinwoo could get into his car, a strange man approached him. The man introduced himself as Adam White, a senior agent from the United States Bureau of Hunters, handing him a business card. Jinwoo recalled hearing about an outsider from Jinho and immediately asked what Adam wanted. Adam explained that he had important information that no country or institution would share, information that could benefit both sides. He also mentioned that they were impressed with Jinwoo's fight on Jeju Island. However, Adam refused to discuss it there and offered Jinwoo a meeting with their deputy director for more details. Jinwoo hesitated but decided to ignore the offer and get in his car. However, before he could leave, Adam mentioned something about an upgrader, someone who could enhance the powers of other hunters. This piqued Jinwoo's interest, and he decided to follow Adam. Adam took Jinwoo to a hotel where the deputy director of the American Hunter Association was waiting. The man introduced himself as Michael Connor, and Michael got straight to the point by handing over immigration papers to the US and offering Jinwoo the chance to become a US citizen. Jinwoo looked annoyed at the change in topic, emphasizing that he was there for information. Michael smiled and explained that the person with that ability was right here. He ordered his assistant to bring someone in. Soon, a woman named Norma Selner was introduced as the only person in the world capable of enhancing a hunter's power beyond their limits. Jinwoo looked at her, sensing something different about her compared to other hunters. Michael asked her to explain her ability to Jinwoo. Ms. Selner began explaining that, Although it sounded hard to believe, her ability allowed a hunter to surpass their power limits. She explained that there were 3 stages of enhancement, similar to a forced reawakening process. Jinwoo, curious, asked how much of an increase could be achieved. Calmly, Ms. Sellner replied that the results varied, but by the time someone reached the 3rd stage, the power boost could range from 20% to 30%. In his mind, Jinwoo started to connect this explanation to what had happened with Hunter Hwang Dong-soo. This offer might be why Hwang Dong-soo moved to America. Such power would be hard to turn down. Michael stated that Ms. Sellner's ability was a special gift for Jinwoo, should he agree to become an American hunter. They would prioritize him in receiving this benefit and give him the freedom to choose any guild he wanted. Ms. Sellner added that there was no rush. They just wanted to help Jinwoo unlock his first stage of potential, asking him to consider it as a gift from them. Jinwoo thought that if this woman was so confident in her ability, it only made him more curious. Ms. Sellner took Jinwoo's hand and asked him to look into her eyes. Meanwhile, Michael thought to himself that this was the perfect opportunity. In his mind, once Jinwoo went through this stage, he would certainly feel the power increase and be eager to continue to the next stage, eventually signing the immigration papers. Ms. Sellner began focusing and activated her power. In an instant, she entered Jinwoo's consciousness, delving into his soul to unlock his power limits. But the deeper she went, the denser the darkness became, an endless emptiness. In the middle of that void, a mysterious figure appeared, staring at her with an intense, piercing gaze. Ms. Sellner screamed in terror, as if trying to escape from something unseen. Her guards immediately aimed their guns at Jinwoo, assuming there was a real threat in front of them. Michael, realizing the situation, scolded his men, ordering them to stop and criticizing their ignorance for almost causing a major problem. He warned them that if this had happened in front of Thomas Andre or Liu Jigang, everyone in the room would be dead on the spot. Michael then bowed, apologizing to Jinwoo for the incident, and ordered his men to take care of Ms. Sellner, who was still visibly shaken. Meanwhile, Jinwoo could only feel confused about what had actually happened to Ms. Sellner. Michael told Jinwoo that Ms. Sellner was unwell and promised to contact him another time. He then called Adam to escort Jinwoo back to his home. After Jinwoo left, Michael asked Ms. Sellner what had just happened. Trembling, Ms. Sellner said that Jinwoo was like a king, a force unlike anything she had ever witnessed before. Michael, hearing this, tried to confirm, asking if Jinwoo's power was comparable to a national-level hunter. Ms. Sellner shook her head slightly, feeling that comparison didn't do him justice. To her, Jinwoo's power was something entirely different, something beyond ordinary comprehension. The figure she saw wasn't just Hunter Sung Jinwoo, it was something darker, deeper, and far more terrifying. She concluded that Jinwoo's power had no limits. Michael fell silent, reflecting on her words, while Jinwoo left the place with a calm face, but his mind full of questions. The scene cuts to the Korean Hunter Association office, where Mr. Go is deep in thought, thinking about Hunter Min Byung-yu's sacrifice during the raid on Jeju Island. He's feeling the loss hard, and he knows that the challenges ahead won't be solved with just one sacrifice, but his thoughts are interrupted when his phone rings. He gets a report about a B-rank gate that popped up in the middle of a highway. He's planning to reach out to a major guild, but then he remembers that the gate is near Hunter Sung Jinwoo's new guild office. Meanwhile, Jinwoo's stuck in traffic, thinking about his last meeting with Mrs. Sellner. Her terrified look reminds him of something tied to the system, and he figures Mrs. Sellner probably won't want to meet with him again after that encounter. Suddenly, Mr. Go calls to let him know what's going on with the gate. He asks Jinwoo to check it out and deal with the dungeon if he can. Jinwoo figures the traffic jam is caused by the gate. With a faint smile, he agrees, especially after Mr. Go assures him he has full authority to act. A huge gate shows up out of nowhere in the middle of the highway. Jinwoo arrives at the scene shortly, and drivers stuck in traffic are surprised to see him. Some recognize him as the famous S-rank hunter, and they know he's here to handle it. However, an association officer stops him, firmly stating that Jinwoo can't enter without permission. Jinwoo gets frustrated and calls Mr. Go. After a brief conversation, he hands his phone to the officer. The officer's attitude shifts immediately when he realizes it's the association chairman on the line. Jinwoo strolls into the gate, and the officer mutters under his breath, hoping Jinwoo will run into trouble. But those hopes quickly turn to fear as the gate transforms into a red gate. The officer is shocked and can't believe what he's seeing. Inside the dungeon, Jinwoo was surprised to find that the exit was closed. He guessed that he must have entered the red gate and realized he'd overdo it. Suddenly, he remembered his mom's words, telling him to do what he wanted. As an S-rank hunter, Jinwoo would be able to save people as his dad did. His dad was a firefighter before he became a hunter, and his mom fell in love with him because he loved saving people. She also told Jinwoo not to overdo it, and these memories made Jinwoo a little relieved, knowing that his mom was not against him becoming a hunter. Jinwoo sensed that if there weren't too many monsters in this dungeon, he could clear it in one day. Go forth. Jinwoo summoned his shadow warriors, and giant forest guardian monsters began emerging from their hiding spots, triggering a fierce battle. The shadow mage cast fire magic from a distance. Igris stabs a monster right in the head with his sword. Iron goes wild, smashing monsters with his axe, while Tusk and Tank scorch the monsters with their fire magic. Beru goes on a rampage, brutally tearing through monsters with ease. After clearing the area of monsters, Jinwoo paused, his thoughts lingering for a moment. A hunter was born to hunt. Monsters aren't the only enemy for a hunter. Hunters have to be careful so that they don't get hunted as well. So first-rate hunters can't put their guard down even more. Even if there are hundreds of thousands of hunts, the hunt will never end. Let's move on to the next target. With that resolve, Jinwoo stepped forward into the forest, his determination unshaken as he moved to confront the dungeon boss. That concludes this episode. Thank you for watching. Peace.